Hello everyone, welcome to JavaScript Arrays tutorial for beginners. First I will introduce arrays in JavaScript, then JavaScript Arrays methods and functions to perform various operations like creating arrays, searching, filtering, merging, and iterating through arrays. There is a lot of stuff to be covered in this video. Let's get started. So what is an array? An array is an ordered collection of values. We store sequences of values in an array. Each value is known as an element of the array, and total number of elements is known as length of the array. So here in this example, length of the array is 5 because it contains 5 elements or values. Position of each element within the array is called index of the element, and index starts from 0. So the index of the first element is 0, and index of the second element is 1, and so on. Index is a 32-bit unsigned integer, so an array can hold pretty large number of elements. An array is called sparse array when index of its elements are not contiguous, so the index numbers need not to be contiguous. You can store the first element at index 10, second element at index 15, and so on. Length of the array is always 1 greater than the largest index. So here in this example, length of the array is 41 because the largest index is 40. So even I have stored only 5 elements in the array, length of the array is 41. It has automatically enlarged the array and puts undefined values for the elements for which you have not provided values. JavaScript arrays are untyped. It means an array element can be of any data type, so different elements of the same array can be different data types. Array elements may even be objects or other arrays. This allows to create complex data structures such as arrays of objects and arrays of arrays. It is important to understand that an array is an object and it inherits properties and methods from array.prototype. Let's start creating arrays. The easiest way is to create arrays through literal syntax, which is simply a pair of square brackets assigned to a variable. In this case, an empty array is created. At this point, length of the array is 0. And then you can assign value to any element of the array. After the name of the array, index is written inside the square brackets and then value is assigned to it. In this example, value 2000 is assigned at the fourth index, which is fifth element of the array. So the length of the array will expand to 5 automatically. It will fill undefined values for the rest of the elements. You can also provide a comma separated list of values within the square brackets to initialize the array at the time of declaration. You can also omit the value of any element. In this case, undefined will be assigned to the omitted elements. Please note, trailing comma written after the last element is permitted, but it is ignored. So here in this example, length of the array 1 is 4, not 5, and length of the array 2 is 3, not 4. Other than constant values, array elements can also be arbitrary expressions containing variables and objects. Here in this example, an array contains other arrays, and other arrays also contain objects in them, so you can create a pretty complex structure. Another way to create arrays is by using array constructor method. Here, constructor method is used to create an empty array. The use of new operator is optional for array constructor. You can omit it if you want to. You can also pass arguments to the array constructor. If the argument is a single integer, it is treated as length of the array. Here I have passed 5 as argument. It will create an array of 5 elements and value of the elements will be undefined. But if you pass more than one arguments to the array constructor, these are treated as values of the elements. So here in this example, an array of 2 elements is created and initialized with values 5 and 10. Array has a length property. It is a read-write property. It returns length of the array, so you can use it to check the length of the array. But you can also assign a new value to it. When you set its value larger than the existing length, the array simply expands, and undefined values are assigned to new elements. So you can use this trick to add new elements to the array and then assign new values to the elements. But when assign a value which is lesser than the existing length, the array shrinks. Here in this example, array 1 is initialized with 3 elements. Then its length is set to 2. So the array shrinks to 2 elements. So using this trick, we have removed the last elements of the array. If you make the length property read-only, you will not be able to expand or shrink the array. And any method which adds or removes elements will stop to work. You can make the length property read-only by using object.defineProperty method and then setting the writable attribute of the property to false. After making the length property read-only, I have tried to set its length to 4. But this does not work. We can use any loop structure to iterate through elements of the array. But for loop is most commonly used with arrays. Here I have used for loop to print all elements of the array. In the for loop, we declare and initialize a counter variable and initialize it to 0. The variable acts as index of the element. Then we write a condition to make sure that the value of the index variable remains less than the array length. This condition is checked before every iteration. And then we access the element of the array using index variable within square brackets after the array name. And then we increment the index variable after each iteration. So this is traditional way to iterate through arrays. But JavaScript also provides a short syntax for the for loop, which is known as for in loop. If you see here, I have written I in array 1. So it automatically initializes the index variable I and makes sure its value is less than the array length and increments it after each iteration. So it is more readable and short syntax. There is another variation of the for loop which is known as for of loop. The for of loop is used when you are only concerned with the element value and not index of the element. It iterates through all the elements one by one, and you don't have to make use of index variable to access the element. So here I have written e of array 1, and here I have simply printed value of e. We can use an array like a stack in other languages. A stack is a last in first out structure. It allows two operations. You can add new elements after the last element, or you remove the last element. The push method is used to add new elements. It does three things. It expands the array to make space for new elements, then adds one or more elements at the end of the array, and finally returns new length of the array. So here in this example, I have used push method to add values 100 and 200 at the end of the array. It returns 4 as new length of the array. The pop method returns the last element of the array and decrements the array by 1. So it only removes the last element by decrementing its length. Here in this example, I have used array1.pop method to get its last element. Adding or removing elements at the end of the array is efficient, but adding elements at the beginning or in between can be costly. We can use an array like a queue in other languages. A queue is a first in, first out structure. It means it only adds or removes elements from the beginning of the array. It is just opposite to stack, which removes or adds elements at the end of the array. It has two operations, unshift and shift. Unshift and shift work like push and pop methods, except that these removes and adds elements from the beginning of the array. The unshift operation does four things. It expands the array for new elements, then shifts the existing array elements up to higher indexes to make room for the new elements, then adds one or more element at the beginning of the array, and finally returns new length of the array. So here in this example, shift method is used. It adds 100 and 200 values just at the beginning of the array and returns the new length of the array, which is 4. The shift operation returns the first element of the array, then shifts the elements to lower indexes, and then adjusts the new array length by removing the last element from the array. Here in this example, shift method is used to retrieve and remove first element from the array. Splice method is used to remove and insert elements from a specific position in the array. It can do both operations in a single call. It accepts a number of parameters. The first two parameters are required, and these must be numbers. The first parameter is start index, from which elements are to be deleted or inserted. If it is less than or equal to 0, then start of the array is assumed. If it is greater than or equal to array length, then end of the array is assumed. The second parameter is delete count. It is the number of elements to be deleted from start index position. Just put a 0 if you don't want to delete any element. And then you can optionally provide a list of items or values to be inserted. You can omit these if no value is to be inserted. Here in this example, item 1 is added to an empty array. Both of the first two parameters are 0. It means there is no item to be deleted. And then item 1 is inserted at index 0. Here in this example, array 1 is initialized with item 1. The splice method is used to insert item 0 at the index 0. So the existing item is moved at index 1 and item 0 is inserted at index 0. Here I have deleted item 1 from array 1. Note that index is 1 and delete count is also 1. It means starting from position 1, one item is deleted. Here in this example, item 1 is deleted from index 1 and new item is added. You can add as many items as you like. I hope you got the idea. Includes is another instance method. It determines whether array contains a specific value or not. It returns true if value exists, otherwise returns false. It accepts two parameters. The first parameter is value to be searched and it is required parameter. The second parameter is the index from which value is to be searched. This is optional parameter and it defaults to 0. You can also provide a negative value for start index. In this case, it is taken as start index plus array length. Here are some examples. Array 1 is initialized with 3 values. These are 1, 2, 3. Here value 2 is passed to includes method. It returns true because value 2 exists in array 1. Here value 4 is searched and it returns false because 4 do not exist in array 1. Here value 3 is searched, but starting index is 3. But starting index 3 is also passed. Index 3 do not exist in the array. Index of the last element in array 1 is 2. So includes returns false. Here start index is provided as -1. We know array length is 3. And 3 minus 1 is equal to 2. So start index is taken as 2. So value 3 exists at index 2. So true is returned. Index of method. Index of method works similar to includes method, but it returns index of the element instead of Boolean. So its parameters and search is similar to includes method. It searches the array for a specific value and returns index of the element if it is found. Otherwise, it returns -1. Optionally, you can provide start index from where search is to be started. If the start index is negative, it is taken as array length plus start index. Here are examples of index of method. When 2 is passed as argument, it returns 1 because value 2 exists in array 1 at index 1. When 4 is passed, it returns -1 because value 4 don't exist in array 1. Here 3 is passed as value to be searched and 3 is passed as parameter. It returns -1 because there is no index 3 in array 1. In this case, array is not searched for the value. Here search start index is passed as -1. So array length -1 is equal to 2 and value 3 exists at index 2. So it returns true. The lastIndexOf is another method similar to indexOf method, except that it searches the last occurrence of a value in the array. It searches backwards from end to the array or from start index. The start index is optional. Here in this example, students array contains David 2 times. Here, lastIndexOf method is used to search David. It returns 3 as index of the last occurrence of David. Here, start index is provided as 3. The result is same as previous one because search is started from index 3 backward. When the start index is provided as 2, it searches backward and finds David at index 0, so it returns 0. It is important to remember that lastIndexOf searches the array backward. Sort method is another important method. It sorts the array in ascending order. But you can provide a comparer function as parameter to provide your own comparer logic for sorting. So here in this example, array1 is a numeric array. After invoking the sort method, it has sorted the array like this. The sort order of the elements is not correct. 9 is appearing after 88. To correct this, I can write a comparer function and pass it to sort method. So here I have written a comparer function. It accepts two parameters for the values to be compared and returns 1 or -1. And it is passed as argument to the sort method. Now when the sort method is executed, it sorts the array in correct ascending order. The sort method performs in-place sorting. So a new copy of the array is not created. In JavaScript, we can pass functions to other functions as arguments. The functions which accept other functions as arguments are called higher order functions. And the functions which gets passed as parameters are called callback functions. Arrays has several methods which accept functions as parameters. These functions can be regular functions, anonymous functions, or arrow functions. We have already passed a comparer functions to the sort method of the array. So here I have written an arrow function in the sort method. Instead of writing a separate comparer function, you can write it as an arrow function or lambda expression. ForEach is another important array method which accepts a callback function and executes the function for each element in the array. Please note the callback function should not be asynchronous. Another point to remember is that you cannot break the loop unless you throw an exception. It returns undefined. So here is the syntax. You can pass 4 parameters to the callback function. Only first parameter is required. It is current item or element on which function is to be invoked. The second is index of the element within the array. The third is name of the array. And the fourth is this argument. Here in this example, forEach method is used to print elements of array 1. Note that the function is anonymous. It has no name. And 4 parameters are passed to this function. On each iteration, the function is executed and new arguments are passed to this function by forEach method. Here, I have written a regular named function. Its name is log, and name of the function is passed here in the forEach method. You can also write the callback function as arrow function inside the forEach method. So this is another way to write callback functions. Every is another array method. It is used to check whether all elements meet the same criteria or condition. The criteria is implemented by the callback function, which gets executed for each element of the array. It returns true if all calls to the callback function returns true, and it returns false if any of the call returns false. The parameters of the callback function are same as the parameters of forEach method. These are current item, index, array, and this arg. Only first parameter is required, others are optional. Here in this example, every method is used to check whether all elements are finite numbers. The array 1 contains last element, which is not a number, so the every function returns false. Sum is another method which is similar to every method, but it returns true if any of the elements passes the test. So any could have been a better name for this method. Here in this example, some method is used to check whether any element is finite number. So it finds the first element as number and returns true. The find method accepts a callback and returns value of the first element which satisfies the condition. So you can use this method to find a specific value from the array. It returns the first value which satisfies the condition by callback function. So find first could have been a better name for this method. Here in this example, find method is used to get first element which is greater than 50. It returns 90 because it is the first element which is greater than 50. The filter method. The filter method is another important method which is most commonly used. It returns a new array of elements which meet the criteria provided by the callback function. In other words, it is similar to find method, except that it returns all elements which meet the criteria into a new array. The source array remains unchanged. Here in this example, filter method is used to filter finite numbers from array 1 and result is provided in nums array. The filter method scans whole array. The map method. The map method is another important method. It also returns a new array as a result. It processes each element of the source array and creates a new element in the result array. The processing is done by the callback function, so length of the array is equal to the source array. And mapping among the elements of source array and result array is 1 to 1. Here in this example, map method is used to extract student names. The students array contains objects of students. A callback arrow function is written in the map method, which returns only student's name, and this is inserted in the result array. In other words, the map method takes an element of the array, executes the callback function, and result of the callback function is pushed on the new array. Sometimes we have to iterate over the array to calculate summarized or aggregate values. For this purpose, we need to declare and initialize a variable to accumulate data. This variable is called an accumulator variable. And then we iterate over the array, calculate some value based on the current item, and add it to the accumulator variable. Here, I am just adding the current item to the sum variable. To perform calculations like these, arrays has reduce method. So here I have used reduce method to perform the same calculation. The callback function which performs calculation is called reducer function. There is no need to initialize the accumulator variable on first iteration. It is automatically initialized with first value in the array. But you can also provide its initial value. And here, value of the expression is automatically assigned to the accumulator variable. So the reduce method executes a reducer function for each element of the array and returns accumulated value. It accepts two parameters. The first parameter is the reducer callback function and it is required. The second parameter is the initial value of the accumulator variable and it is optional. If you don't provide the initial value of the accumulator variable, it is automatically initialized to the first element in the array. But if the array is empty and you have not provided the initial value, it will throw type error. So it is good idea to provide initial value. And the accumulator callback function accepts four parameters. The first two are accumulator variable and current item. And these are the required ones. All other parameters are optional. So here the array 1 is empty, so there is no value to initialize the accumulator variable. It will throw type error. So here initial value is provided and now the code works fine. Here is another example of reduce. It is a bit interesting. The array 1 is an array of 3 arrays. I have to flatten it using the reduce method. The first thing to note is that the accumulator is initialized to an empty array. The current item itself is an array. I am accessing individual elements of the current item and pushing these to accumulator. And then the accumulator is returned here. The end result is a flat array like this. JavaScript array also has a built-in flat method which can be used to flatten an array. There is also a reduceRight method which is same as reduce method, but it starts processing the array from right and last element is taken as initial value of the accumulator variable. if it is not provided explicitly. You can flatten the arrays by using flat method. It is more simple and works recursively to create a flat array. Additionally, you can provide depth as parameter to limit the depth of recursion. By default, it is 1. Concat method. Concat method is used to merge or concatenate arrays or values. The result is produced in a new array. Here in this example, two arrays are declared with values. And concat method is called on array 1. The first parameter of concat method is array x, which is the name of the array. And the second parameter is a number. So array 1, array x, and the number are inserted into a new array. Here is the result. Slice method. The slice method returns a portion of the array to a new array. It accepts two parameters and both are optional. The first parameter is fromIndex and its default value is 0. And the second parameter is toIndex and it defaults to array length. If you omit both of the parameters, the whole array is returned as the result. You can also provide negative values for these parameters. In this case, these are treated as offset from the end of the array. Please note, the element at toIndex is not included in the result, and it should always be greater than the fromIndex. Here are some examples of slice. Here in this example, 2 is passed. So the elements starting from index 2 to the end of the array are copied in the result. Here, fromIndex is 2 and toIndex is 4. So elements from index 2 to 3 are returned. The element at index 4 is not included. Here, values from index 1 to 4 are included in the result. It is important to mention that arrays are just specialized objects. We use square brackets to access the element of the array, and same square brackets are used to access properties of an object. So internally, array index is converted to a string and stored as property of the object. So we can access an array element like accessing a property of the object. Here in this example, array 1 is declared as an object with 0 as property name, and then value is assigned to it. This is how JavaScript treats arrays in the background. In JavaScript, strings are just arrays of characters, so you can access individual characters of the string like elements of an array. Here in this example, first letter is T of string is printed. We can use join method to join elements of the array and return as string. By default, it returns a comma delimited list of values. You can omit the delimiter by passing an empty string to the join method, or any other delimiter like a hyphen in this example. You can also use the toString method to convert array elements to comma-separated string. But the toString method does not allow to pass a delimiter as a parameter. Thank you guys for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel and press the bell button to get notifications of my upcoming videos. I am going to present a lot of content in coming days. And share and like this video, and finally let me know your feedback by writing a comment. All the best.